obviously you've released many landmark records with Atlantic Records, including Enigmatic Ocean, Cosmic Messenger, Open Mind. How do you assemble these sets and, for these shows, and what can audiences expect from this upcoming tour?
Well, the advantage of now we with some hindsight, we can tell what the pieces that are still very exciting to play today. So
right.
We pick up this type of songs that did not age badly. They are still very exciting to play and appealing to us, to all the musicians, because I don't decide like a dictator. I talk to my musicians, and they all have to feel good about playing them. So there are a few from each of these albums you mentioned.
And the group helps decide what's going to be played. Are you changing the set from show to show? Are you coming in with a specific set when you're doing this tour?
No, we put a set together as we start the tour, before starting the tour, but then we might adjust a few songs after a few shows.
Right.
If they don't fit as well, maybe we take new ones, but I would say most of the program will be the same. And what is exciting when we improvise, of course, we play the melodies as they were, the structures of the pieces which are worth still playing today
right.
should be played exactly like they were written. But it's not like rehashing the past, because there are sections in my music where we take turn at improvisation. And therefore, it's like making this music alive again and bringing also the experiences we each have had through the years, ever since we recorded this
right.
many years ago. So we are richer musically, I would say, and we might bring different ideas in our improvisation.
Sure.
So that's why it's exciting to do this reunion tour with these guys.
It's quite incredible, because the Atlantic years for you, that spans a 10-year period of your life when you were living in America, and you're putting together these great concepts creatively. How do you reflect on that period of your career and your lifetime?
Well, I'm not a guy who's into nostalgia.
Right.
The present is very important. I'm still alive. I'm still active, in shape physically, and still being offered to do new projects all the time.
Right.
But revisiting, this music, and it all started because there was some serious interest from fans around the world, and. So listening back to these albums, I must say that, they were. I'm proud of them, and listening to, because I'm not the kind of guy who listens to his own music all the time.
Sure.
Once in a while, like you look at old pictures to see how you looked, but that's it. And listening to my music in the same manner, but really listening back to in depth and to decide which piece we could play again. I must say it was a very exciting time because it was fresh at the time. We were discovering new ways of structuring the music, breaking barriers between styles, new sounds, new instruments. And so that's why it is exciting to make this music alive again.
Right. It's quite incredible. Some of this music, was so innovative at the time and had such great influence on other genres. You're putting together different sounds that might not necessarily, people would not logically think would go together. And it was very innovative, and you kind of pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Was that always something that you had on your mind when you were writing this music and performing this music with these other artists?
Well, it's not something I really had. It was not like a goal saying I want to do something new, different, and breaking. No, it was more like each day experience. It was kind of a slow process, but I started with classical music in my youth. Then I had about 7 years of playing traditional jazz.
Right.
And then I met Frank Zappa and rock musicians, and so all these experiences, year after year, led me to want to create my own music, which would, be a mix of all these experiences. So it's also because I had an open mind, of course, because, in my generation, there was some musicians who were happy to keep playing the same music as in the past or past, older generations. But I was not that I wanted absolutely to be revolutionary and new, but I was attracted by exploring new sounds with my instrument, for instance. The electric violin was a new adventure, a new instrument at the time, and discovering I could do sounds that were never heard before was exciting, not just because they were new, but because they were exciting me at the first place and inspiring me to write music with them.
I mean, obviously, you've been doing this for practically your whole life, and you've kind of forged through and created a lot of different sounds, and some of the electronic work that you did on some of your records is kind of, I mean, it kind of influenced a whole generation of younger musicians in the electronic world. You mentioned earlier talking about some stuff that holds up better than others. Is there certain parts of your catalog that you're not so much as fond of the work that obviously looking back?
Well, I mean, I would say that there are albums which I don't like. All the pieces,
right?
But there are always at least a couple of pieces, if not three, out of an album that I still want to play.
Right. What keeps you, pushing forward? I mean, obviously you're an artist that, you're looking for new sounds, and obviously this tour you're going to be looking back, but you've been doing a lot of new work, obviously with Jon Anderson a couple of years back. When you're approaching a new project, what is it that kind of drives you, that inspires you or gets you excited about a new project?
Well, it's discovering again, going beyond my limits. Like with Jon Anderson, we had met in the 70s, and we had talked about doing something together, and then we got so busy that it only happened a few years ago. And I told Jon, it's too bad we didn't do it earlier. When I heard how it sounded, I thought it was great. And that's when he said, well, better than never. Better late than never, sorry. We had the album title right there. But just to say that to collaborate with someone who is coming from another position in music, a singer who has been writing so much music in the progressive rock world, so it makes me... I have to make an effort to understand his concept and the way he thinks music.
Right.
And but it worked very well because he felt an affinity with mine and liked it. And thanks to this affinity, we could find the right way to combine our musicianship together.
Right.
But each time it pushes me, it's not like a routine, and I love it because there's nothing worse than routine for an artist.
Routine is kind of something that, obviously, you've evolved so much and have put out such great work. I mean, routine is something that you kind of try to avoid. Obviously, when you've mastered your instrument, do you feel like you've mastered your instrument?
Never finished.
Right.
Especially the violin. I think I'm doing pretty good,
right.
And I still discover ways to master it better than I ever did. because the mind is something that comes into play as well, not just a physical thing. And so the experience makes me understand the instrument and how to. But it's such a difficult instrument, and there is no perfection in this life, and maybe it's better this way. So we keep trying.
You mentioned working with the great Frank Zappa. You've worked with a lot of amazing people over the years. Some of my favorite composers, Lalo Schifrin and Frank Zappa, as I mentioned. Both of these artists, they are. When you can kind of look at it, they are at different ends of the spectrum in terms of music. Obviously, Lalo does a lot of traditional jazz, Latin jazz, and obviously the themes for his film scores and things of that nature. And Frank Zappa being very progressive. Could you characterize, what it was like working with both Lalo Schifrin and Frank Zappa?
With Frank, it's because his interest in classical composers made that when I was in the band and I could read music, I came from a classical background, and so did George Duke and the other members of the band at the time.
Right.
So it was for him the occasion to take this music that was maybe sleeping in a drawer at his home, and we were the right band to play that instrumental concept he had in mind.
Right.
And so I was surprised that suddenly to be collaborating in the rock world with a band that in fact was so disciplined, as disciplined as a symphony orchestra almost.
Right.
We were working very hard, practicing, rehearsing, but it was worth it because his music was complex. He was extremely creative. I was very impressed by how rich, how creative his compositions were. So that was very stimulating. All I had to do was to play my instrument. I was not involved as a composer, but it was great it opened my mind because Frank was definitely one of the very first to break walls.
Right.
Between styles of music, from jazz to R&B to classical music and to rock, of course, and the blues.
Absolutely.
Lalo Schifrin somehow has also a classical background, so that's where and jazz. So I also experienced the same elements in my youth, so that's why I was able to play his music without any problem.
Right.
Although, it doesn't go all the way to rock, but Lalo is very open, though, because the last collaboration I did with him was maybe 15 years ago, I forgot, in Europe, and he had written music for a big band, but more than big band, it was almost an orchestra without strings, but with a lot of different instruments.
Right.
And going into world music, he asked me to bring an African percussionist, for instance. So he was also, he is very open.
And his musical output is just extraordinary. It's amazing that just the number of great players and great composers and writers that you've had the pleasure of working with. And recently, on a sad note, we heard of the passing of Allan Holdsworth recently, whom you've collaborated with over the years on several recordings. Do you have any moments or recollections of Allan that you could share with us?
Oh, yeah, it was such an emotional shock when I learned about his passing away. And in fact, there is a label in Los Angeles, Manifesto, which released a box set of 12 CDs of Allan, of his past production.
Right.
And they had asked me to contribute a quote in the liner notes, and I did, and he passed away a month later, which, it was a shock. But yeah, Allan was one of a kind. He stands on his own. He's phenomenal. He was a phenomenon. He should be on his own throne forever.
Right.
When I discovered his playing, that was a big shock. I loved his sound, his way of playing. One of the reasons could be that he started, in fact, he told me when I met him, he started on the violin, which could have influenced this legato style of sustaining the notes, like
right.
when you are bowing a violin. And so the first collaboration was Enigmatic Ocean in 1977. After I discovered his playing on an album by Tony Williams, I was touring in Europe, and while playing in London, I called him up and we met and asked him to come over to Los Angeles, because at the time I discovered his playing, I was writing music for Enigmatic Ocean.
Right.
And I had two pieces which I felt on which he would sound great, I thought, and they were very lyrical. And I was right. He sounded incredible on them. So he came to Los Angeles, and I discovered that in the studio, he could not read any music.
Is that right?
Not a note of music. But he didn't even know what was an A G, or, I said, this melody starts with a G, and he didn't know where it was on the guitar. I said, my God, how can he play so beautifully, so complex?
Right.
His improvisation were really amazing, so inventive. And the guy couldn't read a note of music. So there you go. Music is something else. It's metaphysical, and either you have it or not. It doesn't matter if you learn or read music. It's in you or it's not. But then it depends how you use it and how you develop it. And so Allan was just extraordinary.
Absolutely incredible. It really is, and just the work that you guys had done together over the years is just, absolutely just legendary and great. And I want to thank you so much, Jean-Luc, for joining us. And we're going to look forward to your performance here at the Regency Ballroom. You're going to be in town on June 4th, and then you're going to be going on to Santa Cruz, and you've got a whole month of shows. And I want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed it very much.
You got it. Well, we look forward to it. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
All right. You too.
All righty. Thank you, Jean-Luc. There it is, pioneering jazz violinist Jean Luc Ponty.